Okay, for our second video about instruments options for next year, we are going to do stringed instruments. Now, the stringed family, of course, is any instrument with strings. Now, very specifically, in the case of band and strings programs, what you can choose between are three different instruments, which is violin, viola, and cello. Now, there is a fourth instrument, which is the bass, but the basses are extremely large, and they're not given out as easily because of that. It's one of those things that you would have to discuss with our strings teacher for next year. So I just wanted to go over these instruments. If you enjoyed playing ukulele in 5th grade, those of you who did that, this would be a good option for you. But I wanted to kind of show you the instruments, make sure you knew. So first off, you have violin. Violins are small. They are held underneath the chin and are played with left finger on the strings and right finger on either a bow or just plucking. Very specifically, all of these string instruments kind of work the same. Their bodies are built the same. You have a scroll, you have tuning pegs, you have the neck, you have the fingerboard, which is this black part here. You have your 4 strings. You have the body and the ribs. The ribs are the side. You have your F holes, which are these 2 holes here. You have the bridge and you have the tailpiece. When you play strings, there is a period of time needed to get them tuned before every class, so there is a bit of time needing to be spent on that. I'm not going to take the time to tune mine today because I'm just kind of showing you. Now, one of the biggest differences in the instruments has just to do with size. Violins are the smallest. Most of you would not be using a violin even this big. This is a full-size violin. You'd probably be using a 1/2 or 3/4 size violin, which goes up under the chin and is played here. One thing I do want you to notice, especially those of you who played ukulele, is there are no frets, no lines on the neck of the instrument on the fingerboard to indicate where your fingers go. That's something that you learn to do. Those of you who take this will be using ones with tape marking where to put your fingers, and eventually you'll be taking the tape off as you get better with it. Violins are, of course, extremely high. The lowest one being around there. It's pretty out of tune, as you can tell. The next size down is the viola. Violas look exactly like violins, but they're a little bit bigger. One thing on violas, those of you who want to take them up, actually 2 very important things about violas. The first very important thing about violas is they are in a different clef. So you are not going to be learning in treble clef. You're going to be learning something called alto clef. Alto clef is not something we have talked about, nor would we have talked about it, because it's very specifically only for violas. The other thing to know about the viola is a beautiful instrument, and it's a great one to learn to get scholarships for college, but it is not the instrument that gets the most solo work. It's not traditionally written as a solo instrument, so it doesn't always get the most exciting parts. But if you can work through that, you can play almost every violin song on a viola. There are pieces written for viola, and as I said, it's a great way to get scholarships to college. The next size up is the cello. You guys have all seen my cello before, unless you're brand new to the school. Cellos are extremely large. This is a full-size cello. For some of you, this is about the size of a bass that you would be using if you were using it. These do not go under your chin. It's far too big. It fit under your chin. Instead, they have what's called a peg. And this peg comes out and it gets put into the ground to hold where your instrument goes. The cello sits between your legs, like so, with the neck up and behind your ear. When you play the cello, it's played exactly like the violin. I pluck or I bow the strings, and I'll show you my bow in a second. And then my fingers move along the fingerboard to pick out different notes. So I'm much better at cello than I'm at violin, so I'll go ahead and play through that. So I have 4 strings, low to high, like so. Then as I place my fingers along the neck, I get my other notes. Like that. I can play with a bow. I got my cello bow with me. I'm going to put my cello down so I don't drop it. A cello bow looks like this. They're a little bit shorter than violin bows. They're a little bit bigger than violin bows. I'm going to go over the bow with you in a second. And you won't be starting with a bow. What you'll be doing is you'll be starting with plucking on a finger and getting your left hand into the right spots. That's very important because once we start adding a bow to the mixture, you have to think about my hand posture on the bow. You have to think about down bow and up bow. You have to think about being in the right spot on the strings. You have to get the right length of the bow. You have to get the right pressure. It adds a whole bunch to the instrument that you have to do. So you always start with plucking first, which is called pizzicato, and then you move to arco, which is what you call the bow. So, parts of the bow. You have the nut. When I turn the nut, it tightens the horsehairs by moving the frog. So yes, those are weird names, but we have the nut, the frog, the horsehairs. They're called horsehairs because they are actually horsehairs. Then you have the actual shaft of the bow itself, which is the wood part along the back. I want you to notice I never touched the horsehairs, and I never will, because the oils from my finger get onto it and can ruin it. In fact, when I play my cello and I pizzicato, I pluck, I don't even pluck where the bow goes to make sure I don't have that problem. So when I bow, I'm bowing what's called frog to tip, so I'm going from here all the way to here. Even when I'm doing short notes. I will sometimes do like a little space right here in the middle of the bow where I get the strongest sound. To go really fast, I might even bounce my bow. But for the most point, I want to go from frog to tip when I play on my instrument with a bow. So those are your string instrument options. Again, I want to reiterate, and I said this in your meetings, and I'll keep saying it, you need to pick the thing that you are the most interested in. Do not pick the thing that your best friend's doing just because they're doing it. All of you have done multiple things with me this year. You've drummed, you've done ukulele if you're in 5th grade, you've danced, you've sung, you've played recorder if you're in 4th grade. You've done a lot of different little things, and I know that some of you loved some of those things and did not like the other parts. The problem is, if you join something just because your friend's in there and you hate it, imagine if you were doing just the thing that you didn't like for an entire year. Or possibly even 2 4th graders. You might have to do it for 2 years, not just 1. So make sure that you are picking the thing that you are really actually interested in, not just because your parents want you to do it or because your friend wants you to do it. Because you'll have a better time and you'll enjoy that much more. So when I know more information about it, I will put up something about the third option. I don't know what it is, so I don't want to talk too much about it at this moment. I might not even do a video. Instead, I might do a kind of typed up thing for that one, just so you can see the options. But really start thinking about this because you're going to want to pick real soon what you want to do. All right, guys, bye.